see if we can write the proportion for this first question. Write a proportion to find how many points a student needs to have on the test to get the given score. We're just writing it right now. You don't have to solve it, you just gotta be able to write it. So what should the proportion look like? Trenton? Excuse me, I couldn't hear you, Meg. Nope. A proportion is 2 ratios, so that I have to have more than just one, okay? Wesley. Don't solve it, write it so that you could solve it later. We're just writing it.
It'd be 85 points out of 100 because percentage is out of 100, and since it is 100, we need 85.
Okay, I agree with that. That's only part of it though. What's the other equation or what's the other proportion gonna have to look like? What do you think, Miss Kennedy?
The 85 and then the 2 dots.
Okay, now let's go back and find out something here. We have to be able to answer what question? What question is it are we gonna be able to answer when we get it, if we was to solve it? Back to what the directions say. Write a proportion to find how many points a student needs to have on the test to get the given score. So, how many points are there on the test? It tells us that, doesn't it? I have 100 points. How many points does the student have? Does this tell us that? Does it tell us? No. So what do we do when we don't know the value of something? What do we do, Cooper?
Well, I was going to say, I said 0.85 times 100.
Okay, I don't want you to solve. What do we do when we don't know the value of something?
You have to put a letter in.
We put a letter in. We put a variable in. That's my x, because that's the question I gotta solve. Okay? With this statement, we are saying, let x equal the number points student earns. Okay? Knowing that, let x equal the number of points the student earns. So how do I write, and that's all, did it tell me to find out what that number was? It just says write a proportion. So I'm not solving for anything yet. I will, but not right now. Okay? Write the proportion for number 2. The test is worth 50 points. The score is 74%. How do I write it? How many points is that test worth, Darton?
50 points.
50 points. Okay. How many points did the student earn? Do I know that, Darton?
Yes.
No. So I put in the
75.
X. When you calculate your percentage, don't you take what you earn and divide it by how many points were available. That's what this is. Okay? Now, percent is always out of 100. That's why the denominator is 100. Percent is always out of 100. Write 74% as a fraction. Isn't that 74 hundredths? You do number 3 on your own. Everybody is writing number 3 on their own. Because I want to know that you can write it. Because on your homework, you're going to have to be able to write it. Yeah, go ahead. Nobody? You just want to? No?
There was
Okay.
an extra.
I'll keep it there. I check 3 and it's correct, then move on. Okay, now take a look. Look here, what we got on the front. Yes, many of you have already done it on IXL. That's why we do IXL. No. Good. Now write that one. Do the next one. Find that phone.
It's not an Android.
Just find the bag. Find the phone, sweetie. All right, tell me this, ladies and gentlemen. Do you have x over 25 is equal to 80 over 100? Good. Is it in the Is it in there? Was that phone in there that was going off? All right, turn it off. If it was in there, you're safe. If that was the phone that went off. It was in a bag. So hey, ladies and gentlemen, excuse me, would you please, whoever's phone that is, get yourself back there and get it. Whoa, I'm sorry. It was in your bag? That's a cue. I need a ticket, please. Sorry. I apologize, but I do need a ticket. What is the proportion for number 4? What is that proportion, Caitlin?
Wait, well, I was asking if I needed to ask.
Oh, you needed to ask a question.
So if you were writing it as a ratio, would you like, for like example, like number 20, on number 3, would you do like 25 to x or x to 25 if you were just writing it as a ratio and not a fraction?
It wouldn't matter if you wrote it as 25 over x. Wait a minute, it says, yeah, it wouldn't matter if you wrote it as 25 over x or x over 25. Either way would be acceptable. But proportions look like this, okay? Proportions are written like fractions. So you want to write your ratios for a proportion like a fraction instead of using the colons, okay? So what is the proportion for number 4? What's that proportion going to look like, Gabriel?
X over 110.
X over 110 is equal to
Equals to 90% of 110.
90 110ths. No, 90 100ths.
Oh, yeah.
Always 100 there. You lost me on that one. Okay? That's what we're going to be doing today. So we got a story. Let's see whether we can take that and apply it a little bit further. Got a little bit more details. This is real life, though. I look up recipes for food all the time. Miss Shelley knows I'm always doing food recipes. A chef increases the amounts of the ingredients in a recipe to make a proportional recipe. The new recipe has 6 cups of black beans. Write the proportion that gives the number X of tomatoes in the new recipe. Well, what is the ratio of black beans to tomatoes in the recipe that we have right now? Haley, what's the answer to that question? You might popcorn out to somebody else. I don't know what you're doing, but I want it stopped, and I want you to pay attention. If you have something you're playing with, put it on my desk. Okay. What is the ratio of black beans to tomatoes as we have it right now on this story. Come on, everybody can read. You can all see the recipe. What's the ratio? Black beans to tomatoes. Landon,
1.5 cups of black beans to 1 tomato.
to 1 tomato. Okay? So if I have 6 cups of black beans, 6 cups of black beans, how many tomatoes am I gonna have? I'm just writing it. You got it. That's my X. Good job. Because it says, wait a minute. Whoa, Mrs. Rakestraw. Let me fix that. It doesn't say I have, yeah, it does. It does say I have 6 cups, doesn't it? Okay, so I was right. Sorry. 2X. Okay? It said here, the new recipe has 6 cups. Right here, 6 cups of black beans. And it says that gives the number X of tomatoes. That story really gave us that ratio right there. It's right there in the reading, and I don't even have to calculate anything. Okay? Now, did it say to solve? No. Is that where I'm going to stop then?
Yes.
Sure it is, because that's answering the question, writing the proportion. Write a different proportion that gives the number of tomatoes. Well, what if I go back to the one we had and I say, you have 3 cups. I gotta go back to the,
3 cups of
okay. I'm gonna say, what if you have 8 cups water? 8 cups of water, what proportion will give you the number of tomatoes if you have 8 cups of water? Somebody tell me what you write. Tanner.
2 to 1.
Okay, Tanner, I need a proportion. You gave me a ratio, babe.
Okay.
So what's the first what's the first ratio? What's the way it is?
2 over 1.
The way it is 2 cups water to 1 tomato. And that has to be equal to
8 over X.
That's it. That's writing the proportion. Write a proportion that gives the amount Y of water. Well, we already did it. Let's try. What if we said the amount? Oh, wait a minute. No, that doesn't have anything to do with the tomatoes, does it? Okay, so what if we say we're going to make this recipe bigger and we've got 6 cups of black beans. Write the proportion to tell me how much Y of water you would have. Jillian, what should my first ratio be? Looking at my recipe, what's my first ratio? How many cup of black beans do they have?
1.5.
That's what we're saying, beans to water, is that what I said? Yeah. Okay, so 1.5
2 cups of water.
to how much water?
2 cups.
Okay, so what's the other portion look like then? 6 to 1. That's it. You're absolutely correct. Okay. How many of you think, hey, I could write proportions? I can write proportions, right? And I think you can. The biggest thing to know is just make sure you're comparing the same stuff. All right. We've done all those. Let's go to, now they give us the proportion and they want you to solve. So let's solve for the variable of x. What's the inverse operation of division? Multiplication. So a one-step equation would say multiply both sides times 8. Do you agree? So I'd have 3/2 times 8 equals x. Do you agree with that?
That's so not how
Yes.
I would do it, but I'm not.
Yeah, I did it.
Okay,
I do too.
You could say
But-
24 equals 2x.
But wait a minute, multiplying that out, and you got calculators, isn't this 24 over 2? Well, isn't 8 times 3 24? Wait a minute. Stop. Is 8 times 3 24? I'll give you a Y here in a minute if you'll give me a sec. Because I know some of you are figuring out how to do it a different way. Is this the standard way we solve an equation though? We use the inverse operations to undo the division, right? The inverse operation set of division, x divided by 8, the goal is to get x by itself, am I right? X divided by 8, to undo that, I would multiply by 8. Do you agree with me there? Okay, so that's what I'm doing here. And then you would have to say, well, what is 24 divided by 2? And you would get 12. So x would have to be 12. Now then, for those of you going, I'd do it different, well, so would I, but I'm just trying to keep it here in the standard way. What would you do that would be different? Cooper?
What I did was 8 divided by 2 equals 4, and then 3 times 4 equals 12.
All right, you've got to give me an explanation as to why you could do 8 divided by, what'd you say?
4. 2 equals 4 times 3. 4 times 3 equals 12. 4 times 3.
You got to give me a explanation using some math knowledge as to why you could do that. What would allow you to do that? Why would you ever think to do 8 divided by 2?
Because whatever 3 halves is going into is because 2 times whatever I'm getting myself.
I got it. Let me ask you this.
I'm getting myself way
Cooper, let me ask you this. If I did this, we use something in our class. Oh, get back.
You're hitting your arm.
Javen, I get frustrated.
Cooper, you left the cat out of the bag, you know what you're doing now.
All right, now I got it. Remember we do this?
Good job, Javen.
There's my bow tie. So I could see 8 divided by 2 times 3 using the bow tie. But you didn't see it that way, did you, Cooper? No? Alice?
Okay, so you have to know how you got to 8. And the only way you could, like, the way that I thought, and I'm pretty sure this is how Cooper thought of it, was just how do you get from 2 to 8, and it has to be the inverse operation, which is division. So 8 divided by 2 equals 4, and whatever you do to the numerator, you have to do, whatever you do to the denominator, you have to do to the numerator. So you have to do 4 times 3 equals 12.
Yeah, which is the same thing that I did.
Yeah, but it's not the way I did it.
But you didn't use the bow tie, but you did you did do 8 divided by 2, which is the bow tie. You don't keep change flip because it's multiplication. You're right, you don't keep change flip. You're multiplying 8 times 3 halves. And 8 divided by 2 is 4 times 3, I agree. Yes, ma'am?
I just do cross multiplication because that would be 24 equals 2x, and then it's just like algebra. You do 24 divided by 2 is
That is the other way that you can legally do this. And it'll work every time. You can use the inverse operation which is what you've been taught for a couple of years now. Or you can use the cross multiplication. Either way is acceptable. Personally, I like to cross multiply. It's what I would know as a shortcut. But the thing is, if you don't know why the shortcut works, the shortcut is of no value to you. Because as you get older, you have to defend everything you do in math. And you can only defend it, especially in geometry, with the rules of math. Yeah, you think I'm crazy, I'm serious. So that's why it's important you know how and why you're doing what you're doing. Yes, Caitlin?
On that one at the top where you highlighted the
The bow tie?
How would you get the 24 on that one? Cause that, if you
Because
cross
if
multiply,
you-
it would be 16 and 3.
Right here, if you use the bow tie, you're reducing. 2 divided by 2 is 1, 8 divided by 2 is 4, and 4 times 3 is 12. Got
I
it?
forgot how the bow tie worked.
Forgot the bow tie. Okay, that's fine. Question?
Whenever I multiplied 8 times 3/2, I got 12.
And we did. We totally agree.
But you have 20.
Gabriel?
24 halves.
24 halves. See, I didn't use the calculator.
Oh,
I didn't multiply 8 times 3/2 with the calculator.
you multiplied a process.
I multiplied across by hand because that would be what you would do unless you simplified first. Okay? But my end result, whether I use the calculator or I use my brain, is still 12. Same. No? Okay. He says no. All right, we're gonna go with no. Don't know why that got there or how it got there. Solve it. Do whatever you do to solve it. And I see some going, I don't know what to do. Let me ask you this. Which would you rather do? Use the inverse operation or cross product? Which do you want me to work with? Cross product? Cross product says 5D equals. That's what cross product does. I'm taking cross product is like this. 5 times D equals 20 times 8. Well, what is 20 times 8? 160. That equals 5D. Now, what is D? What is the value of D? Alice? 32. Does everybody agree?
Yes.
Okay, do number 4. You do number 4. Number 1, these here 3 are always back. I'll show you. This way you'll know too. And that's why I assign them this section every time because it's always right there in the book.
Okay, so it's
Uh-huh, it's always at the beginning. Thank you. I'm good with it. I'm totally good with it. Yeah, she got like 23 out of 26 today. She did great.
she and right here, she got a nice. She knew to get from here to there, but she didn't read it out.
Mm-hmm.
And so when she didn't ask me, so I just.
See, here's where I give them calculators now. And so she could have done it 4 times 8, but usually she won't have to calculate.
And she did tell me that, so I just pressed it.
That's what I would have done too.
Okay.
Yeah.
So
Thank you.
I'm trying,
I
as
love
a
it.
non-math teacher, I'm
I
trying.
love it. But the thing is, okay. grade it for what it is. Thanks. All right, somebody tell me, what is Z in number 4? Z equals what? Z equals what? I got some hands up that I don't see a lot of times. I like that. Kaden, what's Z?
Z equals 5.
Z equals 5. Is he correct?
Yes,
I want it. You put it on the
You
paper.
know how you erased the 5? It was on here.
Okay, okay. Kaden, how did you get it?
Cause the top,
Tell me what you did.
okay, so I did, equivalent, so, I don't know,
I heard what,
I got it.
I know what you just said. You said I used equivalents.
Yeah,
So you said, I know what you did. You said 7 times what is 14, right?
Yeah.
And 7 times 2 is 14. So does that also mean that 14 divided by 2 is 7? What you do to the top, you do to the bottom. 10 divided by 2 is,
5.
that is another way of doing it. Okay? Nothing wrong with it. If you can see it, it's an easy one to see. Doesn't matter. It works. The one that will always work for you is the cross product. These would be big numbers though. How do I go from 24 to 8? 24 down to 8. How would I get there? How would I go, Kennedy? Divide by 3. Good. So what's 21 divided by 3? 7. So x then equals 7. Got it? You got 3 different ways of doing it. They all work. Grab onto something and do it that way consistently till you get that way consistent, and then play with some other ways if you choose. There's your assignment.
Oh,
It's lunch.
And it's lunchtime.
Yeah.